Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, we're going to step a little out of our lane. We're not going to stick on gun laws, but we're going to stick with an issue that I know matters greatly to all of you who geek out on this channel, and that, of course, is election integrity. We got a lot of issues in this country as it comes to election integrity. Some states suffer from it worse than other states. It is kind of crazy that one state can count all of its ballots and have them done by that night, and then the other state takes like a month to do it. There's a lot of goofy things going on with our elections. Well, it appears that the president is going to try to tighten a lot of that up through executive order. Can he actually do it through executive order? Well, we're going to find out. The lawsuits will probably start dropping right away as well, but I think that's going to tell us a lot about who's engaged in kind of some of the shenanigans, because the states that are going to try to sue to stop this, well, they're the ones that are probably engaged the most in it. So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about how the president wants to secure your elections. Okay, America, this is what we're talking about. President Trump on Tuesday issued a new executive order as it relates to election integrity. Now, I said at the very beginning, can a president really tighten elections up through executive fiat, such as an executive order is this? Well, the answer is we're going to find out, but I want you to understand here that what the president is doing is not necessarily enforcing any type of new policy. What he is actually doing is he is going to change or actually start enforcing federal election law. There are several federal election laws, some of which have been partially complied with, some of which nobody really gives a damn about at all. These election laws right here, all of these federal statutes are what's in play here. And what the president is basically saying through this executive order is, hey, we're going to start enforcing them. Now, it's a long order. It's a 10-page order. I'm not going to get through all of it, but I am going to give you some of the highlights. Now, the president sets up the need for this executive action the following way. Free, fair, and honest elections, unmarred by fraud, errors, or suspicion, are fundamental to maintaining our constitutional republic. The right of American citizens to have their votes properly counted and tabulated without illegal dilution is vital to determining the rightful winner of an election. Under the Constitution, state governments must safeguard American elections in compliance with federal laws that protect Americans' voting rights and guard against dilution by illegal voting, discrimination, fraud, and other forms of malfeasance and error. Yet the United States has not adequately enforced federal election requirements that, for example, prohibit states from counting ballots received after Election Day or prohibit non-citizens from registering to vote. So you can see exactly where the president is going to be going with this. He further sets up this executive action as follows. Federal law establishes a uniform election day across the nation for federal elections. It is the policy of my administration to enforce those statutes and require that votes be cast and received by the election date established in law. As the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit recently held in Republican National Committee v. Wetzel, those statutes set the day by which ballots must be both cast by voters and received by state officials. Yet numerous states failed to comply with those laws by counting ballots received after Election Day. Okay, so where is the president going with this? Well, he's going a lot of different directions, and I like where he's going with this because these are all areas of weakness when it comes to election integrity. Let's talk about the participation by non-citizens in our election process. The president states several federal laws, including 18 United States Code 1015 and 611, prohibit foreign nationals from registering to vote or voting in federal elections. Yet states fail adequately to vet voters' citizenship, and in recent years, the Department of Justice has failed to prioritize and devote sufficient resources for enforcement of these provisions. Even worse, the prior administration actively prevented states from removing aliens from their voter lists. And then to that extent, the president is going to want to see the voter rolls in all states and on the national level significantly tightened up and cleaned up, because he sets that up in the order as follows. Additionally, federal laws such as the National Voter Registration Act and the Help American Vote Act require states to maintain an accurate and current statewide list of every legally registered voter in the state. And the Department of Homeland Security is required to share database information with states upon request so they can fulfill this duty. Maintaining accurate voter registration lists is a fundamental requirement in protecting voters from having their ballots voided or diluted by fraudulent votes. And the big one, how about foreign nationals not necessarily directly participating in our elections, but participating through funding through what? NGOs, non-government organizations. Not like that would ever be a problem. Not like all of you just learned about NGOs. A year ago, you didn't even know what they were. Now it seems to be a focal point of a lot of our discussions. The president sets up the order that way. Federal law prohibits foreign nationals from participating in federal, state, or local elections by making any contributions or expenditure. But foreign nationals and non-governmental organizations have taken advantage of loopholes in the law's interpretation, spending millions of dollars through conduit contributions and ballot initiative-related expenditures. This type of foreign interference in our election process undermines the franchise and the right of American citizens to govern their republic. Isn't it funny how a president who was the victim of a horrible ruse to suggest that he was the beneficiary of foreign election interference is drafting an executive order to rid our country of what? Foreign election interference? And so ultimately, the president's point here is, it is the policy of my administration to enforce federal law and to protect the integrity of our election process. So again, is there any new laws being implemented here? No, because he's the president. He doesn't get to implement new laws even through executive order. What the president is saying is that there is existing federal law and everyone's been ignoring it. And it is going to be the policy of my administration to enforce it to the letter of the law. Similar to what we've seen with his position on immigration and deportation efforts. Okay, and then we get to the meat and potatoes starting in section 2 of the order. Now listen, we'll go ahead and link the whole order up down below so you can geek out on the specific language, but it's going to start with the National Voter Registry and it's going to work its way down to state registries. So the Election Assistance Commission has to, within 30 days, take specific actions to make sure that the National Voter Registry is cleaned up, and then, and this is important, provide all the resources necessary to all of the state governments with directives for how they are to clean their statewide voter registrations up, and to do so with the primary purpose of taking a look at the citizenship of those people who purport to be registered voters. But then, and you're going to love this, DOJ is going to get to do an audit, because one of the things that the order states that the Department of Homeland Security, in coordination with the DOJ administration, shall review each state's publicly available voter registration list and available records concerning voter list maintenance activities as required by law, alongside federal immigration databases and state records requested, including through subpoena where necessary and authorized by law for consistency with federal requirements. So they're going to be reconciling the federal voter registration and the state voter registrations with an eye on absolutely proving the legality of each one of these registered voters, an eye on their citizenship. And actually, within 90 days of this order, we're going to actually get a bit of an autopsy on how much this has been going on, because the order specifically states, within 90 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall, consistent with applicable law, provide to the Attorney General complete information on all foreign nationals who have indicated on any immigration form that they have registered or voted in a federal, state, or local election, and shall also take all appropriate action to submit to relevant state or local election officials such information. And this is where you're going to start seeing some pushback from states, and I'm telling you, the states that push back the most are going to be the ones that are most guilty of it. And then the Commissioner of Social Security is also ordered under this executive action to participate and cooperate, including sharing databases with all federal agencies and state agencies that are trying to reconcile their voter registry. Then the Attorney General is going to be required to take appropriate action with respect to states that fail to comply with the list maintenance requirements of the National Voter Registration Act and Help America Act. Well, what are you going to do when the states just decide to throw a big old middle finger and say, we're not going to do it? Well, guess what? Just like everything else, federal funding is tied into compliance with this presidential order, because the order states, the Election Assistance Commission shall, pursuant to federal and other applicable law, take all appropriate action to cease providing federal funds to states that do not comply with the federal laws set forth herein, including any requirement for documentary proof of United States citizenship adopted pursuant to Section 2 of this order. Voting equipment. Oh, I know that's a big one. And yes, the presidential order deals with that. There is a 180-day deadline of which all this voting equipment, various equipment that's used in states, is all going to be re-examined and then up for recertification. The order specifically states, within 180 days of the date of this order, the Election Assistance Commission shall take appropriate action to review and, if appropriate, recertify voting systems under the new standards established in Section B1 of this section, and to rescind all previous certification of voting equipment based on prior standards. The Attorney General, however, is going to have authority not only to recommend suspension of federal funds as it relates to election assistance, it's federal funds in general, because one of the things that the presidential order states is, the Attorney General shall review for potential withholding of grants and other funds that the department awards and distributes in the department's discretion to state and local governments for law enforcement and other purposes as consistent with applicable law. And then in addition to that, what's the enforcement of these election laws going to be forward? Well, the order also states, the Attorney General shall take all appropriate action to align the Department of Justice's litigation position with the purpose and policy of this order. Okay, so in addition to obviously focusing heavily on foreign influence, which we're going to circle back on in a minute, this ballots can come on in whenever, 4 or 5 days after the election, we keep counting them. Some states are taking a month. No, because it's specifically the order now demands the Federal Election Commission, the Election Assistance Commission, shall condition any available funding to a state on that state's compliance with the requirement that each state adopt uniform and non-discriminatory standards within that state that define what constitutes a vote and what will be counted as a vote, including that there be a uniform and non-discriminatory ballot receipt deadline of Election Day for all methods of voting, excluding ballots cast in accordance with 52 United States Code 20301, after which no additional votes may be cast. And that exception is for absentee ballots for people who are serving overseas. So, America. Is this order going to go anywhere? Well, probably the injunctions from the district court judges will start dropping tomorrow. And I tell you, all of you, carefully watch the states that are fighting holy hell on this thing, because they are the ones that are most likely engaged in the shenanigans that many of you are concerned about. Is this a very broad and sweeping executive order? Actually, it is. Actually, if you take a look at some of the President Trump's executive orders, and yes, there has been a lot of them, this is probably the most sweeping, the most broad application, and certainly the one that can have the greatest effect on the quality of our elections and therefore the security of our constitutional republic. This is a huge executive order. We have a long way to go to see any of this implemented because the lawsuits are warming up as we speak. Listen. We're going to go ahead and link up the order down below so you can geek out on the language for yourself. You don't have to take our word for it. Now listen, if you got any questions about this or anything else and you want to get a hold of Washington Gun Law, all of our contact information is down there in the description box. If you got an idea for a video we should be doing around here, you click on that link right there and tell us all about it. If you want to subscribe to the monthly newsletter, the ability to do all of that's down there in the description box. And then finally, and most importantly, America, let's remember that part of being a lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation and how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching. Stay safe.